Like if you found the video valuable. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the streets of Florence still glistened as though holding on to the memory of the storm. Elena walked slowly along Via dei Calzaioli, her footsteps echoing between shuttered shops and dimly lit cafes. Midnight was her favorite hour. The city seemed to breathe differently then, softer and more intimate, as though it whispered only to her. She carried an old leather notebook pressed close to her chest. Inside were pages filled with sketches, words, and half-finished poems, pieces of herself she'd never dared share with anyone. Tonight, however, something had drawn her out of her quiet apartment and into the empty streets, as if the night itself had called her name. At the corner of Piazza della Signoria, she noticed a lone figure standing beneath a street lamp. A man, tall and slightly disheveled, with his coat collar turned up against the lingering chill. He was staring at the Palazzo Vecchio as though it held an answer only he could hear. Elena hesitated. Something about him was magnetic. His presence seemed both out of place and exactly right, as if he belonged to the same strange silence that called her out tonight. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said suddenly, without looking at her. His voice was deep, carrying a warmth that contrasted with the night air. She blinked, caught off guard. "Yes, but it's different at this hour. Quieter, almost like it's listening." That made him turn. His eyes, soft brown with flecks of gold, met hers, and for a moment Elena felt her heartbeat stumble. "You hear it too," he said. It wasn't a question. They fell into conversation easily, as though they had been waiting for this midnight meeting their whole lives. His name was Luca, a musician who had been traveling through Europe, searching for inspiration after losing himself in the chaos of too many stages, too many faces. "I thought music was my home," he confessed, glancing down at his hands. "But somewhere along the way, I stopped hearing it. Florence was supposed to be a stop, but I can't seem to leave." Elena listened, clutching her notebook tighter. She wanted to tell him about the poems she had never shared, the words trapped in silence, but fear always stitched her lips shut. Still, with him, it felt different. As the bells of midnight tolled from the cathedral, Luca tilted his head and asked, "Do you write?" The question pierced her. How do you know?" He smiled softly. "The way you hold that notebook. Like it's a secret you don't want to let go of." Her cheeks warmed. Slowly, she opened the worn cover, revealing a page of verses she had written during the storm earlier that evening. The ink had bled a little, but the words still held their weight. She handed it to him with trembling fingers. He read silently, his brow furrowing, then softening into something she couldn't quite name. When he looked up, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Elena, this is music. Not notes on a page, but music in its truest form." No one had ever told her that before. The walls she had built around herself wavered under the sincerity in his eyes. The clock struck 12:30. The piazza was empty except for them, two strangers bound by words and silence. "Would you read more to me?" he asked, almost shyly. She nodded, and as the night deepened, Elena read her poems aloud for the first time, her voice weaving with the quiet hum of Luca's heart. In return, he hummed melodies that rose softly in the spaces between her words, like accompaniment waiting all along. By the time dawn painted the sky in pale gold, the whispers of midnight had become something else entirely, a promise neither had spoken, but both understood. For in the quietest hour of Florence, two souls had found a language only they could hear.